focus on your child and the education they get, but maybe there's about 4 other parents that feel the same way. And if you would stop focusing on simply on the person, but the policy, you might be, instead of being a fighter, be a leader, and you might change a whole system. I'm trying to help somebody. You will discover that people aren't always the real problem. You will discover that every battle is not yours to fight. And you know what you will discover? You might discover that everything and everyone on your path is really not your purpose. See, Moses fighting an Egyptian. But you weren't meant to be fighting no Egyptians. You weren't meant to be, that's not you. You meant to fight a Pharaoh. God got something greater for you. And if you get so fixated and you get so focused on stuff down here, you'll never discover what God's trying to raise you to do up here. Pastor, what do you mean? Moses was fighting an Egyptian, but he was called to fight Pharaoh. David was fighting lions and bears, but he was meant to slay giants. Don't trip on everything and everyone. Sometimes they just practice for purpose. Some stuff that gets sent to you ain't meant to kill you, just make you stronger. Some stuff God is using to toughen you and to develop you and to sharpen you. And if you allow all of that to so consume you to a point that you lose your mind and you go crazy, you will miss the greater purpose that God has for your life. And that's why we, even as the church, we got to understand that we cannot major in minors. We cannot trip about stuff ain't worth tripping about. We can't have no conniption about something that ain't got to do with no salvation. And that's why the older and the more mature I get in God, the more I realize that we got too many souls to save. There are too many lives that are being lost. There are too many people that need it. We ain't got time to be arguing about who going to do the A and the B selection. We ain't got time to be arguing who going to fry the chicken in the kitchen. We ain't got time to be arguing about whether somebody spoke to you when they walked by you. We ain't got to be arguing about whether somebody like you or not. Whether somebody like you ain't none of your business. You just praise God, give God the glory, give him the honor, give him the praise. Is there anybody in here that don't got time to be petty? You ain't got time to be small. You ain't got time to be insecure, because greater is he that is in me than he that is in the church and he that is in the world. Y'all still with me? Did I lose you? You got to be able, listen, almost done. You got to be able to empathize with other people. But not only that, you got to be able to recognize that, that God has given you special access to power, but you can't use your fist. You got to use God's staff. And you got to use it to fight not a situation, but use that to fight systems. But lastly, this, I want you to understand that God has given you a wider purpose. That's what do you mean God has given me a wider purpose? Listen, you see, his name was Moses, which meant to come out. As a child, what he came out was the Nile. But as an adult, what he brought others out was the Red Sea. In ancient times, a person's name, when part, one dimension of that was it represented your purpose. And what I want you to understand is that your purpose is so much bigger. It is so much wider, and it is so much deeper than anything you can imagine. Let me tell you, when you understand what his purpose was to bring those people out. His life story was not about how God brought him out. We don't talk as much about how God brought Moses out as we do about how God used Moses to bring other people out. See, you got to understand that as you become the person that God has called you to be, that you have to understand that there is something greater that people will remember. They will not remember how much money you made. Because you're fronting, they don't even know. How much money you make. That ain't real grass, that's AstroTurf. Nobody, when you die, nobody gonna say, man, they got paid. When you die, nobody is gonna talk about what kind of car you drive. When you die, nobody's gonna talk about what your zip code was. When you die, nobody's not going to talk about what's the last tax bracket that you applied, that you paid your taxes under. When you die, nobody's going to talk about where you vacationed in the summer. When you die, nobody's going to talk about how much money you have in the bank. They will not remember all the things God did for you. What people will remember is what God used you to do for somebody else. Go read an obituary. I read a few. I've never seen a zip code in an obituary. I've never heard too many people talk about their mean coats in an obituary. I never people talk about where they used to vacation at that much in their obituary. I've never seen people talk about how much money they made in their obituary. When you read that obituary, they talk how they bless somebody, how they help somebody. Because if I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can help tell somebody that he's traveling wrong, if I can heal somebody, then my living will not be in vain. I'm trying to preach to somebody. Is there anybody in here that has discovered that you ought to be able to thank God, not for what God did for you, but how God has been using you and blessing you to be a blessing to somebody else? And if you don't believe that that works, go bless somebody. When you go bless somebody, it'll do something on your inside. When you bless somebody, it'll make you feel better than you ever felt before. When you bless somebody, you feel like you can lay down for the rest of the day. When you bless somebody, it feels like you done some good for once. When you bless somebody, it inspires you, it motivates you, it encourages you. Am I preaching to anybody? Is there anybody in here that knows that when you bless somebody, it blesses you because you realize God has been better to you than you have been to yourself? And the fact that God had to spend so much time getting your messed up butt up, he had to keep blessing you that you finally got enough that you can bless somebody else. Just the mere fact that you finally got enough blessing to bless somebody else, that blesses your soul. You ought to praise God right now. Look how far the Lord has brought you. He used to bless me. Now I'm blessing somebody. Now you the one giving loans. Now you the one helping other kids. Now you the one blessing other people. Now you the one helping folk pay their rent. Now you the one blessing people on Thanksgiving. Is there anybody in here that knows I went from being blessed to getting a blessing? Let me tell you. And don't you realize that when you realize that people ain't always the problem, when you realize God gives you greater access to power, and you realize all the blessings that God has really promised, let me tell you, God will give you a greater praise. It's right here in the text. There is no praise when God brings them out of the Nile River. The first time we see praise in Exodus is when God brings the children of Israel out of the Red Sea. It's called the praise of Moses. Moses starts praising God for how the Lord took down Pharaoh. Moses starts praising God for how God used Moses to wipe out his army. Moses starts praising God how he took down Pharaoh, his chariots and his horses and his army. And I need you to understand that it ain't a real praise if somebody else ain't involved. It's not a real praise if you can't really link that praise to how God using you and how you going to use that blessing to be a blessing to somebody else. And too many of us have had a selfish praise. You've had a narcissistic praise. We've had a selfish praise. But I'm here to tell you, if it ain't a participatory praise, if it's not the kind of praise that somebody else can be a part of, it's not the kind of praise that somebody else can't join in, if it's not not the kind of praise that somebody else can't appreciate. That's the kind of praise you ought to do in private, but don't bring